I think it's really hard to understand what this movie is doing without being able to put it in the context of India today. When you especially are looking into foreign film, like they're coming out of particular contexts and histories and worlds. And I think it is, a context that gets lost a lot of the times when you're kind of entering a new cinematic tradition without kind of understanding the world that it came up in.
Welcome back to Former Feds and Friends, where former government employees react to sci-fi, fantasy, animated films, and all things nerdy, wonky, and awesome. I'm Madeline Velturo, and I'm a former stabilization advisor with the U.S. government. And today I am joined by a former colleague of mine, not from the government, but from a previous life, Zeba Fazli.
Hi, I'm Zeba Fazli. I'm a research analyst at the South Asia program at the Stimson Center. Currently, I am the managing editor of South Asian Voices, which is our online policy platform for people in or working on South Asian security issues, foreign policy, economics, domestic politics, all the things possible.
Link in the description.
Before my think tank career, I was a grad student working on Indian cinema and politics. It is still my first love. It is something I can talk about at the drop of a hat, and I'm very much looking forward to doing that today.
Awesome. Well, it's perfect because today we are reacting to RRR. This is well, it's not a Bollywood film, but
it's certainly not.
Indian.
It's an Indian film from the Telugu film industry.
Okay. All right. And I came to it from almost no familiarity of South Asian history. My area of focus has always been on sub-Saharan Africa. So I'm really excited to pick it apart with you today and learn more about what I missed watching it the first time. It's interesting, this idea of using the local population itself to occupy itself.
It started with the East India Company hiring Sipahis as their own armed forces, right? The number of British colonials actually in India through the 18th and 19th century is very, very small compared to the population of the Indian subcontinent, right? And so initially they sign up for service there because it's a regular paycheck and a way of kind of getting in with people who are clearly ascendant, right? This is inspired by Alluri Ramaraju, who is a resistance leader, freedom fighter in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, so modern day Telangana. You know, let's be clear, as the director himself is, this is an entirely fictional story. The real Ramaraju is a freedom fighter. He is fighting for the rights of Adivasis, or you can kind of translate as Aboriginal, tribal populations.
This movie is he's so, like, they're such heroes. Like, the idea that he withstands this barrage and comes out on top.
Yeah, that's very true of a lot of Indian cinema, but I think especially Telugu cinema. Telugu cinema in particular really puts a premium on hypermasculinity and kind of the hero and presenting the male stars as heroes. When Westerners were watching RRR, they're like, wow, this is like a Marvel movie. This is like superhero cinema, right? I mean, it's a common theme. It's not particular to Rajamouli or to RRR, but I think it is kind of really fantastically over the top in a way that is emblematic of Telugu cinema and kind of Indian cinema largely, but also just, you know, well executed. Certainly in this intro.
Yeah. He just does not die. Refused to die.
I think Telugu cinema in particular, but a lot of Southern Indian cinemas, as well as increasingly North Indian and Hindi cinema, is trying to figure out where it stands in kind of the post-pandemic entertainment world. And so what has been reasonably, and in fact kind of wildly popular, are things that are called Massy, right? So these are like grounded, rooted, really appealing to kind of like the widest possible audience, which is pretty inevitably young men, right? The way that you appeal to like a really massy audience is in large part in this kind of heroic presentation of your male star, of your male actor. And so it's a really like populist way of thinking about what the role is of the star and kind of how you structure a narrative around him, or if there are two stars, in fact. Hindi cinema has kind of looked at the wild popularity and success of RRR, of Rajamouli's previous movies, the Bahubali series, and other kind of big Telugu and Tamil cinema hits, and thinking, why are these movies working at the box office and ours aren't? And a lot of the answers they're coming up with are trying to play into similar tropes, which kind of, they exist in some ways in Hindi cinema in terms of, you know, the hero, how you position a star, how you position an actor, in terms of the violence and the action and all of that. And I think there's been kind of mixed success in how Hindi cinema is trying to do this. Yeah, this is very much part of the kind of cinematic DNA of Telugu cinema in particular, and kind of a lot of Indian cinemas writ large.
वो दरअसल गोंडों की बच्ची है। तो उनके सर पे सींग होते हैं क्या? ना ना, भोले लोग हैं। हर जुल्म यूं ही खामोश सह लेंगे। पर उनकी एक खास बात है, वो भेड़ की तरह झुंड में रहना पसंद करते हैं, और इसीलिए उनका एक कटरिया होता है, दिलो जान से।
We're setting up NTR Jr.'s character, you know, the message coming from this representative of the Nizam of Hyderabad to the British government saying, you know, the people from whom you kidnapped, you know, the tribe that the child you kidnapped belongs to, you know, they're framed as very innocent. I think the line in Hindi is something along the lines of they're, you know, as innocent as lambs, which is not true in real life. So the Gond tribe is a real tribe in kind of this milieu where Telugu cinema comes from and is based. And so as an Adivasi tribe or an Aboriginal tribe, these are some of the first people to really rebel against the Nizamate, first of all, and the British government. And I think we can talk about Beam in particular, but I think there's been a lot of criticism coming from Gond film critics of kind of the way that the community is being portrayed in this film, both kind of in this scene as well as in Beam's character as well. On the one hand, we have Ram, who is presented as, you know, this uniformed police officer serving the British, very quote-unquote civilized, compared to Beam, a real-life Gond leader. I think this kind of, there's like the fire and water framing that you get with the little title cards before their intros, but it's interesting the places in which the film is deciding, okay, Ram, we're presenting this way, Beam, we're presenting this way. And kind of, you know, very in sync with nature, or, you know, shirtless and running the forest and, you know, wolves and tigers, oh my. So that's an interesting little parallel, or not parallel, contrast, actually.
कितनी बार कहा है बाएं हाथ से मत खाया करो.
NTR's character is spying as a Muslim, right? He's, you know, doing the cosplay as the topi, the skull cap, and the, you know, taviz and all the things, and is supported by a Muslim family. And so I think it's interesting, right? Because so much of the film revolves around how it understands Beam and Beam's place in society. And I think there's criticism, and I'm sure we'll get to it later on, in how Beam is portrayed as a Gond, as a tribal, as how he understands himself. But I think that this kind of early part of the film where you see him, you know, being supported by a local community, particularly a Muslim community, pretending to be that. And I mean, he's a mechanic. He's very much in tune with modernity. Yeah. In a way that I think the film is kind of, I don't know if you would say confused, but there's some ambiguities there in how it understands what modernity is and how Beam in particular is navigating those things. The real life Korean Beam is, you know, a very educated man, speaks and writes many languages. So he's, you know, quite sophisticated, as is this one. And I think as the film goes on and kind of the plot really picks up, then you kind of see a strange kind of shift in how the character of Beam is understood.
Look at all these brown buggers. What do they know about art? About finesse? About dance? Tango? Swing? Flamenco?
I was gonna say all of these dances are indigenous to brown places.
Is that a commentary on kind of the bankruptcy of British culture? I don't know.
Aw, they're such bros.
I know.
You gotta love a good bromance, even in the context of, propaganda.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of scholarship about the frame of dosti or friendship in Bollywood and Hindi cinema in particular. Kind of the transgressive potential of the close friendship of two male characters.
Interesting.
Particularly male heroes. And kind of, you can, read that as queer reading. You can read that in the case that they're, cross-class, cross-caste, cross-religion, right? So there's a lot of, transgressive potential here. I don't see that in RRR. And I don't know enough about that context in Telugu cinema, but I imagine similar kind of possible readings. I love a dance floor site of imperial contestation.
I also love the subtle nod to the role, to the intersection of patriarchy and policing a woman's body in colonialism, without then also bringing that to its natural conclusion. It's useful to highlight the role of patriarchy only in contexts where it can help to fight my enemy.
Exactly. Yeah. No,
and then we don't need to talk about it anymore. Damn.
And here again, you're sort of seeing a contrast of the civilized uniform, fancy party, and nature as represented.
Yeah, the animalistic.
Yeah, and again, incredibly problematic in many quarters to be portraying Bhim in particular as a this is a caste question. This is a kind of Adivasi question. The real life Korean Bhim is a Goan tribal leader. He is kind of advocating for the rights of Adivasis to their land. So there's certainly that connection. But in this kind of animalistic framing, that is, an invention of the film.
Betrayal. I want to not love it, but I love it.
जिद करोगे तो मारे जाओगे घुटने टेक कर जुर्म कबूल करो और अपनी जान बचा लो.
Because this is the scene where now we know Ram's anti-colonial intent, but Bhim does not know them yet.
Right.
It's so funny because I was so impressed by this character knowing nothing about. I was like, oh, it's such a cool character. And it's so interesting to learn that it's nothing is real about it.
At least not in this way.
Yeah.
And again, kind of re-emphasizing this sort of tribal would-be connection to the land.
Yeah.
Right? He says that he's drawing strength from the world, from the earth that gave birth to him, from the water, etc., etc. And that is kind of imbuing his resistance with strength and fortitude.
मैं सोचता था देश के लिए कोई भी या फिर किसी की भी कुर्बानी जायज है, पर मुझे आज समझ में आया भीम कोई आहुति नहीं, वो खुद ज्वालामुखी है जो क्रांति में बंदूकों के जोर पे लाना चाहता था, वो भीम के एक गीत ने ला दी.
I think he's very humbled by Bhim's resistance and its ability to, inspire a violent uprising, right? This is not what happened in that first opening scene when we were introduced to Ram, right? But no, it's interesting, but then, they talk about that and his realization that you need Bhim, but then that never comes, it just gets abandoned because the weapons are what matter and Ram's story is what matters. Ram is the upper caste, upper class hero, and he has the benefit of, it's a very tragic story, but it is a backstory that is, engineered to really tug at your heartstrings as a viewer. And so it kind of changes the understanding of who has righteousness on their side for the viewer. And Bhim has it, but Ram's journey is the one that becomes more important.
And since he's got, because this is a really important realization that anyone who is in the business of using violence to achieve just aims has to deal with. It's a very common part of the journey, that the part that he's going through now, but I think you're right that it doesn't really end up meaning that much in the end. Like this realization for him doesn't really,
it doesn't do much.
Yeah.
Like at the end, it's about armed resistance, about, you know, a shootout between the British and the Indians. And there's nothing that requires kind of the moral righteousness that Bhim is able to translate. You know, if it was another popular uprising where you don't have enough guns for everybody, but you do have, you know, Bhim being an inspiration, then that would be one way of marrying those journeys.
Yeah.
But that's not.
But it's just the two of them godlike.
Yeah.
लेकिन उसके लिए उन्हें अपनी सबसे अच्छी दोस्त को धोखे से गिरफ्तार करना पड़ा। आखिर उन्होंने फैसला किया कि वो अपने दोस्त को बचाकर ही रहेंगे और उसको छुड़ा भी लिया, लेकिन इस कोशिश में खुद पकड़े गए।
Feel guilty, Bhim.
आज से 2 दिन बाद उनकी फांसी है। लिखा है उनके शव को ले जाने।
मैं तो मल्ली के लिए आया था, पर वो तो आया था इस माटी के लिए। मैं जाहिल गवार नहीं समझा।
I mean, this is the moment, right, where we see the kind of subordination of Bhim's journey as he's understood it to Ram's kind of greater cause.
Yeah.
In a way that is very interesting. This film is billed as a 2-hero movie, time-wise and action-wise but I think a narrative force. It's kind of subordinating the story of this lower caste, Adivasi, you know, tribal figure in the name of the kind of quote-unquote national story as embodied in an upper caste, upper class freedom fighter in Ramaraju. And again, this is also, again, some religious iconography in that Hanuman is often portrayed as carrying Ram on his shoulders. So we saw this earlier in the film too, but now kind of like the transformation is really coming to the fore.
Alright, so we're back on the weapons. Little detour.
No, but the weapons are there, but it's not like a mass uprising. It is
Right.
against the world.
Yeah, it's his original quest.
Yeah.
That has not really changed. Oh, I didn't really establish that when they put him in prison, it allows his hair to grow really long.
Yeah.
For the images.
Right? I mean, he's got the bow and arrow. He's got the costuming. He's got the tilak on his forehead. He, you know, has been transformed into this, iconic hero god of Hinduism.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was already a superhero. You know, he's become a god.
That's a shot.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think Telugu cinema in particular, and Rajamouli himself is really good at this in terms of like setting up the iconography and not just making it look cool, but having emotional resonance. And the interesting thing is that, like, because it's set in the 1920s, we're all working on the assumption that there's still another 25-ish years before, you know, the struggle
Britain
is over,
leaves.
right?
Yeah.
So everyone is aware of that, and I think that, you know, helps in terms of the stakes of you don't have to beat back the entire, you know, British colonial forces. Your battle is restricted to, like, this night that allows you to escape. So, like, there is, like, some narrative space there for it to be this kind of battle and not the kind of mass popular uprising that it seemed like they were kind of going for in that scene when Bhim was being whipped. It's still, to my mind, sidelines a lot of what Bhim's journey has been and kind of makes it in service. I mean, as he himself says, you know, my job is to reunite Ram and Sita. His job is to help kind of make this story made famous in the Ramayana to complete that story.
Mm-hmm.
The reunion.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the question that Ram asks, you saved my life. What can I do for you?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of inexplicably, Bhima says, I want an education. Can you educate me? And again, this line, I think, has drawn a lot of criticism because it's sort of, again, Bhima's an educated guy. He's, been around the country, been around the world. He's not this kind of uneducated, unsophisticated person. And the film has shown us that he is not an unsophisticated person, right? And so, again, there's this kind of paternalism in the kind of caste and class. Here we go. Yeah. Yeah, right. There's this kind of paternalism in kind of subordinating the caste and class and journey of Bhim to Ram. The message written on the flag that Ram just did with his blood, Jal Jangal Zameen, that is actually, a saying that has been taken up by Adivasi groups since the 40s, but is credited to Bhim, not to Ram, right? So if you're kind of taking away Bhim, sorry, great slogan, the kind of calling card for a lot of Adivasi rights groups, and giving it to an upper caste, upper class hero, then again, you're kind of subordinating the journey to that of an upper caste, upper class.
Yeah.
When we watch this closing song, I think the other thing that's gotten a lot of attention is that montage of freedom fighters they honor. So there was a lot of discussion at the time of, we're seeing Vallabhbhai Patel, we're seeing, Subhash Chandra Bose, we're seeing a lot of other Tamil, Telugu, Keralites, freedom fighters, some of whom don't have the same national profile as a Nehru, as a Gandhi. But so there's this question of, if you're not highlighting them, what does that mean? Especially given the propensity and the narrative of the BJP, which is the ruling party in India and kind of, vastly dominant culturally, politically, etc. And, has a very uneasy relationship and, in fact, a critical relationship with the legacy of Gandhi. And especially given that someone like the 18th century Maratha king Shivaji being highlighted in a montage that is otherwise about 20th century freedom fighters is really remarkable, and I think, in my opinion, impossible to read except as a nod to kind of BJP imaginings of history, where the Maratha kings, and especially Shivaji, are kind of promoted as the natural antagonist and the kind of preferred historical kings over the Mughal Empire, which is kind of seen as the Muslim foreign invaders who colonized India for centuries. This film, there's an interesting spectrum, I would say, as to how as of understanding of how much RRR plays to those sentiments compared to other films that have come out before and since, and how much more kind of nakedly propagandistic they are. And I kind of fall in the middle of that spectrum, and that, as I've said, they're incredibly problematic elements as far as how it portrays caste, class, historical understandings of the freedom movement. But I think it's comes at a particular time in Indian culture and Indian history where it is increasingly difficult to make a film of this scale without nodding to those impulses, even though it is coming from a state and a cinematic tradition that has a somewhat different relationship with the center, as opposed to, say, Bollywood, which has become more and more reflective of and kind of intertwined with the central government. It's interesting, right? Because I think around the world you're seeing these kind of right-wing adjacent movements coming to the fore. So certainly in India, we're sitting in the U.S.
Where else could we be talking
about? No, seriously, this has been a global trend, and I think it is evident in how history is being reappraised at every turn. I think in India it is especially important because of how contested this is. You have the central government rewriting history textbooks to take out the Mughals or minimize them in favor of kind of the Maratha and other so-called Indian and Hindu kingdoms and dynasties. Films like RRR and a lot of the other kind of this cohort in the early 2020s of really bombastic, masculine, high caste Hindu heroes it kind of recasts history, right? RRR was not necessarily, I would say, intended to be, a global hit. But I think in transplanting a story that is very rooted in southern states like Telangana and Andhra Pradesh to the north, to Delhi, to the capital, it's kind of positing a national level of importance. And especially thinking this is the 1920s, these characters have come to Delhi at the same time as when the non-cooperation movement is happening. This is when the Khilafat movement is happening. So big moves are being made by the Indian National Congress and Gandhi and Nehru and plenty of others. And knowing that there was an interchange between Ramaraju and these figures that is kind of pushed to the side in order to kind of elevate these, slightly this particular narrative of the freedom movement. This is not to say that, Gandhi and Nehru and all in the Indian National Congress are, the end all be all. We can talk about those, their shortcomings and their flaws and failures, but it is, I think, a particular choice.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard to understand what this movie is doing without being able to put it in the context of India today. It is, I think, a context that gets lost a lot of the times when you're kind of entering a new cinematic tradition without kind of understanding the world that it came up in. When you especially are looking into foreign film, like they're coming out of particular contexts and histories and worlds. And I think, like, if you enjoy RRR, great. I'm glad you do. I hope that means that you will look into its history, into the history it's portraying, because I think, like, this is not a reason to not watch it. This is not a reason to not enjoy it. This is a reason to learn more about the culture it's coming from and kind of where it stands. And hopefully that means you'll find more favorites and more, songs certainly to put on your playlist. That's half the joy of Indian cinema.
That's it for this week on Former Feds and Friends. Thank you so much to Zeba for your awesome commentary, and thank you all for tuning in and watching. As a reminder, we bring our expertise to bear in these reactions, but they are off the cuff. We are reacting in real time, so we can't guarantee that everything we say is fully accurate or that it applies the same way in every context. If you have questions about what we discuss, please do leave them in the comments below. We love engaging with you down there. If you're in a place to support the channel, we always do welcome contributions to our Ko-Fi account, which is linked in the description below. And until next time, this is Former Feds and Friends. We used to work for government. We don't anymore, but we still work for you. And we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.
I'm a research analyst at the South Asia program at the Stimson Center. I've been there for, 7 years, which is when we first met.
We're old now.
Yeah, I can't believe it. I'm also the...
And what have we really gotten done?
That's a question I ask myself all the time.
It's a question I avoid asking myself.